Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello ladies and gentlemen. In this occasion, International Conference of Mathematics and Mathematics Education 2021 held by Universitas Sebelas Maret, I want to present an article entitled Mathematical Literacy Profile of Primary School Students. The authors of this article are me, Linda Nurmasari, and my advisors, Professor Budiyono, Professor Nurkamto, and Mrs. Murni Ramli at.D. Mathematics is a universal subject studied by primary school students around the world. However, there is still a gap between the mathematics taught in schools and its application in the real world. Mathematical literacy is a bridge that connects mathematics with its application in the real world. An essential part of mathematical literacy is using, doing, and recognizing mathematics in various situations. OECD 1212 defined mathematical literacy as an individual's ability to formulate, employ, and interpret mathematics in various contexts. Meanwhile, Indonesian Center for Assessment and Learning 2020 defined mathematical literacy as the ability to think using mathematical concepts, procedures, facts, and tools to solve everyday problems in various contexts relevant to individuals as citizens of Indonesia and the world. In this study, the mathematical literacy of primary school students was defined as the ability of primary school students to formulate, employ, and interpret mathematics to solve everyday problems in various types of contexts relevant to their age and stage of development. Indonesian Center for Assessment and Learning divided content of mathematical literacy into 4 categories. First, number consists of integers and fractions. Second, geometry and measurement consists of compound flat shapes, filled spaces, speed and discharge. Third, algebra consists of one variable linear equation, simple number patterns, and comparison. Fourth, data and uncertainty. It's about data presentation. To obtain data on mathematical literacy profiles, it was necessary to arrange appropriate tests for primary school age students. A study on the mathematical literacy profile of primary school students was once conducted by Ekawati et al. In 2020. Ekawati et al. Referred to PISA, while in the study the context and content of mathematical literacy questions referred to Indonesian Center for Assessment and Learning. However, the aspects of thinking were the same as in PISA, namely formulate, employ, and interpret. The questions arranged were more realistic questions that include real-world problems, which require mathematical modeling, problem-solving, and reasoning. By understanding the profile of mathematical literacy, teachers can provide appropriate learning and assessment. In this study, the test method was used to obtain data on the mathematical literacy profile of primary school students. The test was structured according to the mathematical literacy construct built through theoretical studies and consulted with 2 mathematicians. The test was multiple choice, consisting of 16 questions. It was administered to 112 grade 6 students from 5 primary schools in Sragen, Central Java, Indonesia. Grade 6 was chosen because the material tested includes all the content taught in primary school. The purpose was to see the learning outcomes for 6 years in primary school. Mathematical literacy indicators in primary schools were determined based on aspect, content, and context of mathematical literacy in primary schools. The distribution of content and context of mathematical literacy referred to a minimum competency assessment of level 3 for grade 5 and 6. Mathematical literacy test content consists of number by 40%, geometry and measurement 25%, data and uncertainty 25%, and algebra 10%. Mathematical literacy test context consists of personal context by 25%, sociocultural 25%, and scientific context 10%. To assess mathematical literacy, the following formula was used. score gain divided by maximum score times 100. After that, rounding was done so that there were no numbers after commas. For example, if a student can answer 10 questions correctly of 16 questions, her grade was 10/16 times 100 equals to 62.5, rounded up to 63. The results of the mathematical literacy test given showed an average score of 44. These results indicated a low mathematical literacy score. 56% of students scored below 46 and only 17% of students scored more than 65. According to the construct field, the cognitive process of mathematical literacy includes formulate, employ, and interpret aspects. To arrive at the employ stage, students should have gone through the formulating phase. Likewise, students should have gone through the formulate and employ stages of the interpreting stage. Thus, it can be assumed that the formulate aspect should have the highest percentage of correct answers. However, the findings showed that the right solution for the formulate aspect were lower than the employ aspect. The rate of correct answer on the formulate aspect was 38%, the employ aspect was 53%, and the interpret was 36%. Sample questions from the three aspects are shown in the following table. Question number 2 was an example of question in the formulate aspect, number content, and scientific context. Only 35 students answered correctly. This indicated that most of students still did not understand negative numbers. Question number 5 was an example of question in the formulate aspect, algebra content, and personal context. Only 23% students answered correctly. This showed that many students still did not understand that without brackets, the division operation must be done before subtraction. Question number 8 was an example of question in the employ aspect, number content, and sociocultural context. The percentage of correct answer was 54%. It's relatively high, however many students still did not understand that 7 equals to 1. Question number 14 was an example of question in the interpret aspect, data and uncertainty content, and personal context. The answer key of this question is C. Makmur, and it was chosen by 32% of students, and 32% of other students choose D. Ali because they show the lowest price of goods and postal fee without considering the discount. The average score of 11 years old students was 43, 12 years old student was 47, and 13 years old students was 36. As you can see, the average score of 12 years old students was higher than 11 years old students. And the average score of 13 years old students was the lowest. The exact cause of this was not known, but maybe it was due to the lack of sample because only 10 students aged 13. The average score of male students was 47 and female students was 41. The average score of male students was higher than female students. Further research may be needed to analyze this result. The findings of this study indicated that the mathematical literacy of primary school students was low. Student scores on the formulate aspect were lower than on the employ aspect. It was unexpected because to read the employ and interpret stage, students have to go through the formulating stage. However, the results of this study remain consistent with the research results of Wijaya et al., which showed that understanding and transformation errors were most dominant, and students made fewer errors in mathematical processing and in interpreting mathematical solutions concerning genuine real-world situations. It implied that students mostly have difficulty in the early stage of completing context-based mathematics texts, for example, understanding real-world problems and turning them into mathematical problems. Examples of questions on the formulate aspect were given, and it was seen that there were still many students who did not understand the correct function of symbols or punctuation when formulating problems into mathematical sentences. Many students did not understand the function of parentheses and the difference in the order of arithmetic operation symbols. They also did not understand the concept of negative numbers when associated with real-world problems. Other findings showed that the average score of male students on mathematical literacy tests was higher than female students. Although a more in-depth analysis was needed, these results were not much different from the results of the I-MSS study. In the I-MSS 2019, the average mathematics achievement from 58 countries for boys was 503 and for girls was 499. The results of the mathematical literacy test on 112 students in 5 elementary schools showed that the average score was 44 of 100. These results indicated a low mathematical literacy score. The findings also showed that student scores were lower in the formulate aspect than in the employee aspect. 12-year-old students have higher average scores than 11-year-old students. However, students aged 13 years had the lowest average score compared to the other two groups. The average score of male students was higher than that of female students. Based on the findings, teachers should focus on teaching how to turn real-world problems into mathematical sentences. Further research related to appropriate learning models or strategies to improve elementary school students' mathematical literacy is needed. Okay, that's all my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.